Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Porter looked down the skirt of his lavender sundress. The annual getaway had become a cherished ritual, a brief respite from the constraints of everyday life. The gentle click of the door closing behind him startled Porter from his reverie. His heart leapt into his throat, pulse quickening as the realization set in. He was locked out of his room, exposed in a way he'd never intended. "Oh God," he whispered, fingers clutching at the delicate material of the dress. The hallway stretched before him, suddenly seeming endless and fraught with peril. For a moment, Porter considered hiding in a nearby alcove, waiting for housekeeping or security to pass by. But the thought of explaining his predicament, of seeing judgment or worse in their eyes, made his stomach churn. Taking a deep breath, he steeled himself and took a tentative step forward. The carpet muffled the sound of his footsteps as he moved down the corridor, eyes fixed on the ornate pattern beneath his feet. "You can do this," Porter murmured to himself, willing his racing heart to slow. "Just act natural." As he rounded a corner, the sound of approaching voices made him freeze. A couple emerged from the elevator, deep in conversation. Porter pressed himself against the wall, willing himself to become invisible. The woman's gaze flickered over him briefly, a smile touching her lips. "Lovely dress," she remarked as they passed. Porter blinked, stunned by the casual compliment. "Thank you," he managed to stammer, a tentative smile forming on his face. As the couple continued on their way, Porter felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The world hadn't come crashing down. No one had pointed and laughed or recoiled in disgust. For the first time since stepping out of his room, he allowed himself to relax. With newfound confidence, Porter straightened his posture and continued down the hall. The click of his modest heels against the floor became a rhythm, each step carrying him further from fear and closer to liberation. At the end of the corridor, Porter found himself facing a decision: left towards the lobby, or right towards the hotel's garden terrace. The thought of venturing into more crowded areas still made his palms sweat, but the allure of the outdoors was strong. "Right it is," he muttered, turning towards the glass doors that led to the terrace. The evening air was warm and fragrant, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. Porter inhaled deeply, savoring the moment. A few other guests milled about, enjoying cocktails or quiet conversation, but no one paid him any particular attention. Finding an unoccupied corner, Porter leaned against the railing, gazing out at the meticulously manicured gardens below. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, a perfect complement to his lavender dress. "Excuse me?" a voice beside him said, causing Porter to startle slightly. An older woman with silver hair and kind eyes smiled at him. "I couldn't help but admire your dress. The color is absolutely perfect for this time of day." Porter felt warmth bloom in his cheeks. "Thank you," he replied, surprised by how natural his voice sounded. "I've always loved lavender." The woman nodded approvingly. "It suits you beautifully. I'm Margaret, by the way." "Porter," he responded, then winced internally. Should he have given a different name? But Margaret's smile never faltered. "Lovely to meet you, Porter. Are you here on vacation?" The conversation flowed more easily than Porter could have imagined. Margaret was a retired art teacher, full of stories about her travels and the beauty she'd seen in the world. As they chatted, Porter found himself relaxing further, gesturing animatedly as he shared his own passion for photography. "You know," Margaret said thoughtfully, "there's an exhibition of local artists in the hotel gallery tomorrow evening. You should come. I have a feeling you'd appreciate it." Porter hesitated for a moment, old fears threatening to resurface. But the warmth of the evening and the easy acceptance he'd encountered so far bolstered his courage. "That sounds wonderful," he replied. "I'd love to." As the sky deepened to twilight, Porter bid Margaret good night and made his way back inside. The lobby was busier now, guests returning from dinner or heading out for the evening. He navigated the space with growing confidence, even catching the eye of a handsome man at the bar who offered a friendly nod. Reaching the front desk, Porter explained his predicament to the clerk, a young woman with a nameplate that read, Jasmine. "Of course, sir. Ma'am." Jasmine stumbled slightly, her eyes widening as she took in Porter's appearance. "Either is fine," Porter said gently, surprised by his own calm. "I appreciate your help." Jasmine's shoulders relaxed, and she smiled. "No problem at all. Let me just grab a new keycard for you." As she worked, Porter found himself reflecting on the evening's events. What had started as a moment of panic had transformed into something unexpectedly beautiful. He'd connected with strangers, been complimented, and most importantly, been seen, truly seen, for who he was. "Here you go," Jasmine said, handing over the new keycard. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" Porter paused, an idea forming. "Actually, yes. Could you tell me more about the art exhibition tomorrow night?" Jasmine's face lit up. "Oh, it's going to be fantastic! Local artists, live music, even some interactive installations. It starts at 7 p.m. in the gallery space near the restaurant." "Perfect," Porter said, already envisioning himself there, perhaps in a different outfit, but with the same sense of freedom he felt now. "I'll be there." As he made his way back to his room, Porter's mind raced with possibilities. The annual getaway had always been a time of self-discovery, but this year felt different. It wasn't just about wearing the clothes he loved in private anymore. It was about stepping into the world as his true self, even if only for a few days. Back in his room, Porter carefully hung up the lavender sundress, smoothing out any wrinkles. He caught sight of himself in the mirror, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with excitement. For the first time in years, he truly liked what he saw. Settling onto the plush bed, Porter pulled out his phone. His finger hovered over the contact labeled Mom for a long moment before he pressed call. "Hey, sweetie!" His mother's warm voice came through the speaker. "How's the vacation going?" Porter took a deep breath. "It's amazing, Mom. Actually, there's something I want to talk to you about when I get back." There was a pause, then his mother's voice, filled with love and understanding. "Whenever you're ready, honey, we're here for you." Tears pricked at the corners of Porter's eyes. "Thanks, Mom. I love you." As he ended the call, Porter felt a sense of peace settle over him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and adventures. But for now, he allowed himself to bask in the glow of self-acceptance and the promise of a future where he could be truly, unashamedly himself. The next morning dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through the gaps in the heavy hotel curtains. Porter stirred, blinking away the remnants of sleep. For a moment, he felt disoriented, the events of the previous evening seeming almost like a dream. But as full consciousness returned, so did the memories. The panic of being locked out, the unexpected kindness of strangers, and most importantly, the liberating feeling of being seen and accepted for who he truly was. Porter sat up, stretching languidly. His gaze fell on the lavender sundress, carefully hung on the back of the closet door. A smile tugged at his lips as he remembered the compliments he'd received. It was more than just the dress, he realized. It was the confidence he'd found while wearing it. "All right. he murmured to himself, swinging his legs over the side of the bed.
Let's see what today brings.
After a quick shower, Porter stood before the open closet, contemplating his options. The art exhibition wasn't until evening, but he felt a newfound desire to explore the hotel and its surroundings, no longer content to hide away in his room. His hand hesitated between his usual masculine attire and the small collection of feminine clothes he'd brought. Taking a deep breath, Porter reached for a flowing maxi skirt in a vibrant floral print and a simple white blouse. As he dressed, Porter found himself humming softly, a sense of excitement building. He applied a light touch of makeup, just enough to enhance his features without feeling overdone. Looking in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. Not because of the clothes or makeup, but because of the joy radiating from his expression.
You've got this,
he told his reflection, squaring his shoulders. Stepping out into the hallway felt different this time. There was still a flutter of nervousness in his stomach, but it was overshadowed by a sense of anticipation. Porter made his way to the elevator, his skirt swishing pleasantly around his ankles. In the lobby, the breakfast crowd was starting to thin out. Porter hesitated for a moment, then decided to treat himself to a proper meal, rather than hiding away with room service as he'd initially planned. "Table for one?" the hostess asked with a warm smile. Porter nodded.
"Yes, please. And if possible, could I have a seat by the window?"
"Of course! Right this way!" As he followed the hostess to a sun-drenched table overlooking the hotel's lush gardens, Porter couldn't help but notice the lack of reaction from other guests. A few glances, perhaps, but nothing like the scandalized stares he'd feared. Settling into his seat, Porter perused the menu, allowing himself to relax into the moment. A waiter approached, notepad in hand. "Good morning," the young man said cheerfully. "Can I start you off with some coffee or tea?"
"Coffee would be wonderful, thank you,"
Porter replied, his voice soft but steady. As he waited for his order, Porter found his gaze drawn to the other diners. Couples laughing over shared jokes, families corralling energetic children, solo travelers absorbed in books or tablets. The normalcy of it all was oddly comforting. His coffee arrived, along with a plate of fresh fruit and pastries. Porter savored each bite, relishing not just the flavors but the entire experience. It was a simple thing, having breakfast in a hotel restaurant, but it felt monumental. As he finished his meal, Porter overheard snippets of conversation from a nearby table. Two women, probably in their 30s, were excitedly discussing plans for the day.
"We have to check out that new boutique in town," one said. "I heard they have the most amazing dresses."
Porter's ears perked up. He'd researched the area before his trip, but had never dared to venture into any clothing stores presenting as female. But now... Gathering his courage, Porter approached their table.
"I'm sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I couldn't help overhearing. Would you mind telling me more about this boutique? I'm new in town and always on the lookout for unique pieces."
The women's faces lit up. "Oh, you absolutely have to go!" the one with curly red hair exclaimed. "It's called Whispers of Silk. Just a short walk from here. They have the most gorgeous selection." Her friend nodded enthusiastically.
"And the owner, Vivian, has an amazing eye for helping you find exactly what suits you best." "That sounds perfect,"
Porter said, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement.
"Thank you so much for the recommendation."
As he turned to leave, the redhead called out, "Love your skirt, by the way. The print is gorgeous." Porter felt warmth spread through his chest.
"Thank you,"
he replied, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Back in his room, Porter gathered his essentials into a small purse, another item he'd never dared to use outside the safety of his private getaway. He took a final look in the mirror, adjusting his blouse and running a hand through his hair.
Whispers of silk,
he murmured, testing the name on his tongue. It sounded magical, like a portal to another world. In a way, he supposed it was. The walk into town was pleasant, the morning sun warm on his skin. Porter found himself noticing details he might have overlooked before. The way his skirt moved in the breeze, the pleasant click of his sandals on the sidewalk, the freedom of not hunching his shoulders or trying to make himself smaller. As he approached the boutique, its whimsical storefront coming into view, Porter felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. But beneath it was something stronger, determination, hope, and the lingering warmth of every kind word and accepting glance he'd experienced since stepping out of his room in that lavender sundress. Taking a deep breath, Porter pushed open the door, a small bell announcing his arrival. The interior was a pastel dream, racks of flowing fabrics and sparkling accessories catching the light.
"Welcome to Whispers of Silk,"
a melodious voice called out. A woman with silver-streaked black hair and laughing eyes approached, her smile genuine and warm. "I'm Vivian. How can I help you today?" Porter hesitated for just a moment before squaring his shoulders and meeting Vivian's gaze.
"I'm looking for something special,"
he said, his voice steady.
"Something that feels like me."
Vivian's smile widened, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Well then," she said, gesturing towards the colorful array of clothing. "Let's find your perfect whisper, shall we?" As Porter followed Vivian into the depths of the boutique, he felt as though he was stepping not just into a store, but into a new chapter of his life, one filled with color, authenticity, and the freedom to be utterly, unashamedly himself. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of silk, chiffon, and laughter. Vivian proved to be not just an expert stylist, but a compassionate listener. As Porter tried on outfit after outfit, she gently coaxed his story out of him, offering words of encouragement and understanding. "You know," Vivian said, as she helped Porter zip up a midnight blue cocktail dress, "I've seen so many people come through those doors, each on their own journey of self-discovery. But there's something special about you, Porter. You've got a light inside that's just bursting to shine." Porter blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the kindness in her words.
"Thank you,"
he whispered.
"I've spent so long hiding, I almost forgot what it felt like to just be."
Vivian squeezed his shoulder gently.
"Well, consider this your official coming out party, darling."
"Now, let's find you something fabulous for that art exhibition tonight." In the end, Porter left Whispers of Silk with several new outfits, including a stunning emerald green wrap dress that Vivian insisted was made for you, dear. But more than the clothes, he carried with him a newfound sense of belonging. As he made his way back to the hotel, Porter found himself walking taller, his steps light and purposeful. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the town, and for perhaps the first time in his life, Porter felt truly in harmony with his surroundings. Back in his room, Porter carefully laid out his new dress for the evening. There was still some time before the exhibition, so he decided to treat himself to a long, luxurious bath. As he soaked in the warm water, scented with lavender bath oils, Porter allowed his mind to wander. He thought about his mother and the conversation they would have when he returned home. There was fear there, certainly, but it was overshadowed by hope and the knowledge that her love for him was unconditional. He thought about his colleagues at work, wondering how they would react if he one day showed up as his true self. It was a daunting prospect, but no longer an unthinkable one. Most of all, he thought about himself, the person he had been, hiding and afraid, and the person he was becoming, step by brave step. As the bathwater began to cool, Porter rose and wrapped himself in a fluffy hotel robe. He approached the mirror, wiping away the steam with one hand. The face that looked back at him was familiar yet changed, as if the inner light Vivian had spoken of was now visible on the surface.
"Hello, you,"
Porter said softly to his reflection.
"It's nice to finally meet you."
The process of getting ready for the exhibition felt like a ritual, each step a celebration of self. Porter took his time with his makeup, enhancing his features with a subtle but skillful hand. He slipped into the emerald dress, relishing the feel of the soft fabric against his skin. A final spritz of a floral perfume, a last check in the mirror, and Porter was ready. He grabbed a small clutch purse, tucking in his room key and a tube of lipstick for touch-ups. As he made his way to the hotel's gallery space, Porter found himself thinking of Margaret, the kind woman from the terrace. He hoped she would be there, a familiar face in what still felt like uncharted territory. The gallery was already bustling when Porter arrived. Soft, classical music played in the background, mixing with the hum of conversation and the clink of champagne glasses. Art in various mediums adorned the walls and pedestals, vibrant paintings, intricate sculptures, and multimedia installations that begged for closer inspection. "Porter! Over here, dear!" Margaret's voice cut through the crowd, and Porter felt a wave of relief wash over him. He made his way to where she stood near a large, abstract canvas, her face lighting up as she took in his appearance. "Oh, don't you look absolutely stunning!" Margaret exclaimed, pulling him in for a quick hug. "That color is magnificent on you." Porter beamed, twirling slightly to show off the dress. "Thank you. I actually just got it today at the most wonderful boutique in town." "Whispers of silk?" Margaret asked with a knowing smile. When Porter nodded, she laughed. "Vivian has a gift, doesn't she? She's dressed half the town at this point." As they chatted, Porter found himself relaxing into the atmosphere of the exhibition. Margaret introduced him to several of her friends, artists and art enthusiasts alike. To his delight, each interaction was marked by warmth and acceptance. "You simply must meet Elias," Margaret said, guiding Porter towards a tall man with salt and pepper hair who stood before a series of haunting black and white photographs. "He's the photographer I was telling you about yesterday." Elias turned as they approached, his piercing blue eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled.
"Margaret, always a pleasure. And who's your lovely friend?"
Porter felt a blush creep up his neck at the compliment.
"I'm Porter," he said,
extending his hand.
"Margaret tells me you're quite the talent with a camera."
Elias chuckled, his handshake firm and warm.
"I do all right, but I hear you're quite the shutterbug yourself. What's your preferred subject matter?"
As Porter launched into a description of his love for capturing candid moments and street scenes, he felt a sense of ease wash over him. Here, surrounded by art and open-minded individuals, he wasn't being judged for his appearance or the sound of his voice. He was being seen for his passion, his knowledge, his essence. The conversation with Elias flowed easily, touching on everything from the technical aspects of photography to the philosophy behind capturing a moment in time. Porter found himself gesticulating animatedly, his earlier self-consciousness forgotten in the heat of artistic discussion.
"You know,"
Elias said thoughtfully,
"I'm always on the lookout for fresh perspectives. If you're interested, I'd love to see some of your work. Maybe we could even collaborate on a project."
Porter's heart soared at the suggestion.
"That would be incredible," he breathed. "I'd be honored."
As the evening wore on, Porter found himself moving from conversation to conversation with growing confidence. He discussed the use of color with a vivacious painter named Zoe, debated the merits of various sculpting materials with a burly artist called Bruno, and even found himself in an impromptu dance with Margaret when a particularly lively piece of music began to play. Throughout it all, Porter marveled at how natural it felt to simply be himself. There were moments when he caught sight of his reflection in the gallery's windows, the emerald dress shimmering in the soft lighting, and felt a surge of joy so intense it almost brought tears to his eyes. As the exhibition began to wind down, Porter found a quiet moment to step out onto a small balcony overlooking the hotel's gardens. The night air was cool and fragrant, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Porter turned to find Elias joining him on the balcony, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He offered one to Porter with a smile.
"It's beautiful,"
Porter agreed, accepting the glass with a nod of thanks.
"This whole evening has been magical."
Elias leaned against the railing, his gaze thoughtful.
"You know, I've been coming to these exhibitions for years, but there was something special about tonight. A certain energy in the air."
Porter took a sip of champagne, the bubbles dancing on his tongue.
"I know what you mean. It's like possibility. Like anything could happen."
"Exactly," Elias said, raising his glass in a small toast.
"To new possibilities."
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!